All right, so we're making a video for the short reviews from May 4th because all of them came out on or are coming out tomorrow on May 12th. So we're getting right to these because there is not a lot coming out in the first couple weeks of May, and I didn't think that making another short reviews column for the records that are coming out on the 26th made sense until I'd gotten through these. So here we go. Grave Desecrator is a Brazilian band that have been around for quite a while now, and Immundissimi Spiritus is one of their best records. They've always been kind of accused of carrying a little bit of sarcophago in their sound, and certainly the early bestial side of Brazilian black metal, and where that came from, really the heart of extreme metal directly. So they've always conveyed that really well, and this is kind of just one of their best records yet. I think that they cover a very wide range of sometimes surprising styles, and in general, we get old school extreme metal and attitude from this thing that is very much in line with classic extreme metal at its both earliest and meanest and aggressive side, which still lines up with what people think of as, war metal or bestial death metal in that sense. So I probably lean this album more towards the black metal side of things in a lot of ways, but that's just the way that I see it. And it complements the records from Ascended Dead, Thanatomass, and Impetuous Ritual, which are all coming out on the same day. So if you like that kind of thing, definitely include this record in with those because it is just as serious of a contender in that realm. So Kronos Compulsion is a Denver, Colorado-based death metal band. I believe they're a trio. And Malicious Regression is kind of their first official release. It's their first fairly short EP. And it's in a kind of the modern United States death metal sound these days, which is slow, intending to be a little bit barbaric and hardcore influenced, and definitely has groove leading the way. And now this score and this assessment has nothing to do with the band and like whether they're competent or anything like that. They're a fine band and all that. I think that I've just heard so much of this type of death metal in the last 5 years that they don't have a chance to really stand out, making a pretty straightforward version of it. This is just up to par, just up to standard, and it just does nothing for me I sat with it, spinning it time after time, and there's no tweak to the formula. There's no personalization to it, unless I've missed a lyrical cue or something like that. It's just kind of a pretty standard release, and it just wasn't enough for me to remember it. It's a good starting point for a band, and certainly something I would have put in like a demo form. So if that's the intent, it makes sense. But I don't see what stands out about this group yet. So I'm looking forward to that as it comes along. But in the meantime, just all right. We're checking out if you are really in tune with the simpler, more hardcore side of death metal today, and you just want to mosh and have a little bit of fun to some dirty ass death metal. XAD is a Larvik, Norway-based band who have been around for quite a while and put out several records, which were very much in the style of later Cathedral in the 2000s and early 2010s, which were heavily influenced by both proto-metal and 70s progressive rock. So this band definitely have leaned into the 70s progressive rock, both statement record and the melodicism truly was available to 70s prog rock. And I would say definitely kind of reaching towards the mid 70s with this record, where it's much more subdued much more personal and dramatic, and you definitely get the sort of red era King Crimson as well as some Wishbone Ash throughout this record in a very strong way, but it's all very subdued. And the vocals almost reach kind of a adult-oriented rock feeling to them. You know, that is kind of the danger of not looking past the 70s, is you get a lot of early 80s kind of yacht rock feeling to a lot of what you do. And this is still a progressive rock influenced doom metal band in a lot of ways, but this is a much more elaborate form of what they had done before. And it will take a while to sink in. It just might not fully get there for people looking for big riffs, but if you're patient, I think this album really does pay off with its statement and just its ambition. The Giant Stream is a 2022 self-released full-length album from Italian group Warco. I believe they're a trio, and it never got its like big official release until Regain Records or Helter Skelter picked it up, and it was really worth bringing into more wider public notice because it is so good. It is very much in the tune of mid 80s traditional doom metal. And if you're a fan of that, you'll recognize it right away. If you like Pentagram's Relentless, Storm Varning from Count Raven, and Trouble, and just Sabbath in general, more late 70s, mid 70s Sabbath, you'll understand what this is right away. They do have their own groove to it, but it is traditional doom metal in the best sense, in that it still feels a little bit of a twinge for the late 70s. And it's just a great record. It's already come out, and there's been some conversation around it, but it really does deserve being picked up and taken seriously because it is such a good debut that kind of came out of nowhere. I think that I'm looking forward to do what they do next, and I hope there's a little bit more of a bigger push to behind it in terms of when everything is still fresh, because then you know how people are today. They just pick it up when it's new and they drop it after that. So great record, definitely worth giving some serious time and checking out. Malivore is the debut from Hazard. Now, Hazard is the solo endeavor of Hazard, who is a Parisian musician who is known for Les Chants de Hazard, which is a combination of like neoclassical and like a more aggressive vocal metal project. It's all, this is an offshoot of an already very abstract thing, which leans into more dissonant black metal. And I think that he's done a really great job of translating the ambition of his original project with his own voice on this project. And it is a little bit aimless, a little bit samey throughout, but there's something, there's a genius sort of brilliancy within each song that pops up and makes it kind of worth sitting through some of the more typical dressings that step us through those more potent moments. So there's a lot of depth here. There's a lot that is obscured here, but there's I would suggest that each song will sell itself as worth the time if you give it the time, even though it is a very obscurant and just abstract work in general. Definitely the kind of thing you look for on I Voidhanger, and definitely the kind of thing that I have fun visiting, if not briefly, unless there's more to it. And in this case, there was more to it, and I went back and I kind of checked out his other band and enjoyed that maybe even more in some respects. So jump into that if you feel like it. For Victor is the latest full-length album from Sacrilegious Impalement. This is a Finnish black metal band who are, they're definitely typically Scandinavian in some sense, but certainly more influenced by the late 2000s Swedish black metal ideal, and not so much the orthodox, but kind of the steps that were moving towards that and beyond that simultaneously in the late 2000s. I know that's like a funny distinction, but there's a certain quality of emperor-esque feeling to their movement, the mania of certain Watain releases, and you can definitely tell where the inspiration is coming from with this band, but they are giving it their own flair, which is not necessarily trying to sound like everything else in Finland right now. And I thought that kind of stood out while also being a thing that I have a lot of in my own collection, which is like 2000 Swedish black metal. So there, none of that nuance has to matter if you just like black metal. I think that this is a fine example of a very strong standard sound that has a lot of really interesting guitar work woven into every piece. So it was a very easy album to pick up and enjoy, and as just a fan of black metal. So check that out. Amer is the latest full-length album from Parisian black metal band Moonrich, and I reviewed their previous album Fugue back in 2018, and I was surprised to find that a lot had changed, but their level of modern, very monotone expression in the vocals was still very much a big detractor for their sound for me. It's not expressive enough, or it doesn't really accomplish very much without a lyric sheet. So I found it was just kind of the dog barking in the next house over kind of feeling for listening to it, even though the rhythms are quite fine and aggressive and the themes are quite interesting. I just found the vocals just were an impasse for me as far as digging deeper in. Um, if you're looking for something that is certainly modern but varietal, which touches on dissonance as often as it does brutality, there is something to what they do, and I think each of their releases are up to a fine standard. I think that it just had a couple of quirks that I can't overlook when there's so much black metal out there. So check it out if that might be your kind of thing.